Welcome back to the ASCI Lounge, ASCI members. I'm Monique Fennick from Australasian Supply Chain Institute, and we have a three-way podcast interview today on the ASCI Lounge with two experts in technology adoption. So let me introduce our guests to you. Our first is Jordan Gill. Jordan is the Senior Solutions Advisor in JDA Software's APAC pre-sales team. JDA is a corporate member of ASCI and has assisted us to educate our community on navigating complex end-to-end supply chain challenges and really tapping into the power of AI and machine learning. Jordan is no stranger to IT, having worked with customers on next-gen technologies such as AI and machine learning. And we're really excited to have you here on the ASCI Lounge, Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here, having dealt with so many technology implementations and having worked both here and in the United States and Latin America. So we're really pleased to have you on the program. Our next guest is Chris Poulton. Chris is the Chief Operating Officer at 4PL. Chris, 4PL is an Australian-owned consultancy and offers strategic advice to companies who are implementing technology, so we can see the nice synergy there. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Monique.
Inevitably, implementing technology involves change. And Chris, you're experienced in transformation and change management. Your strengths are in a mix of strategic and analytical skills supported by strong understandings of integrated processes across finance, supply chain, and production, and how to apply technology to support these. So it's really great to have you on the program as well, Chris. Welcome, and to both of you. Let's kick into our topic for today, which is why technology adoption in supply chain is so incredibly hard. Just taking us back to the 1st of April earlier this year, there was an AFR article that came out, and we actually thought it was an April Fool because it said robots would take 6.5 million jobs by 2030. And we sat back at ASCI and thought, is that actually possible? And yes, it is. Automation has been a big focus at ASCI for us in our education programs these last 12 months. And it's been important for us to look at how to educate our members in ways that they can lead transformation and digital transformation, which is why this is such an important topic. So let me turn to the experts now. And my first question is to you, Chris. How do you approach the education of employees in a new system and ensure operations and IT can be aligned and engaged and also enabled?
Thanks, Monique. So I think the first thing when we talk about robotics and what it means for people in technology-enabled programs is often there's a fear of what's going to happen to me, what does it mean for me? And in some cases, we do see, replacement of tasks by machines. But often, from a change perspective, we need to start understanding that we have to manage people's fear, and often that fear is driven from a position of ignorance. So communication is really important, and that starts with sponsorship from senior management through to middle management, making sure we engage very early on the why. Why are we doing something? What's in it for me? And being consistent on the big picture so that people understand across the organization. Often we will lose one particular role and we create another, because in the same way, a lot of new jobs get created over time. The second thing is probably technology is an enabler. It in itself doesn't always drive benefit. It's how we improve processes and become more efficient and productive across processes. So making sure we're very clear on the business reason that we're doing things, and that way people can understand, the why again. Getting users adopted early in the perspective is good. There's always some users who will be supporters and some who are protractors, and so making sure we early on have those champions to adopt and support others through the journey is really important. and then communicating the journey so people understand what's coming next, what's happening. Sometimes these projects can run for a period of time. Keeping people informed as to where we are in the journey is really important, and even in implementation, using a pilot so people can get a feel for what it means. So that's really how we can engage early and take people through the journey, Monique.
It sounds like a really sensible approach and something that I think our members and listeners would be familiar with. Jordan, it's great to have you on the program because your experience is vast and across many different geographic regions, and you've seen implementation in all its forms. Do you think that from where Chris is coming from, that really is the focus for your implementations of your solutions? I mean, software, is it no longer the cost prohibitive in supply chain management projects? Is it really about sponsorship in senior management, about change first, and how do you sort of reduce the costs and still deliver a successful outcome with the technology side?
Thanks, Monique. So yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with Chris in that the education of the employees from the top level all the way down to say warehouse employees and the employees that are doing the day-to-day work is critical. I can say that any project that I've seen struggle or even fail across whether it's a developing market in a very immature, technologically immature organization or organization, the failure comes from a lack of change management or poor dissemination of information about the why and how a particular tool, because at the end of the day, the technology is just a tool or an enabler, is going to make the employees' lives easier, or how it might change their work rather than eliminate their work. So yeah, that's an absolutely critical component. As far as how cost prohibitive these projects are, it's also true that the costs of implementing these types of technologies have come down. Part of that has to do with the advent of software as a service as a delivery model, as well as a technical capability, and really the ability to go step by step or in a phased approach in implementation, and standardizing processes as you go allows us to lower that total cost of implementation, and it also allows for a more gradual adoption of the software. So yeah, very much true that we're not looking any longer at extremely long project life cycles and extremely costly implementations before you start to see any value. Now we have ways in which we can deploy and gain value much more quickly and in a stepwise fashion.
Yeah, that must be music to your ears, Chris, I'd say, because software as a service allows the implementation process to slow it down and obviously to let people catch up to the concepts and the ideas and the change. Is that the case?
Yes, I think one of the things with software as a service is it's easy to adopt it as you need it, and it's easy to scale up and add new processes, etc. So yeah, it makes it a lot more flexible.
I can see how the partnership between JDA and 4PL is a match made in heaven there. Between the two of you, you have the change management piece and the technical or the technology solution piece that come together. So if I was a business, Chris, I suppose I'll ask you first. How do I get my business to understand the value of investing in change management, or do I first ask them to invest in the technology?
I think when it comes to going through the whole investment in change, is often we always hear projects really fail because of the technology. They fail because of the engagement with people. And business cases, we always look at the costs, and we see it very often that organizations, if they're looking to reduce cost in a project, especially from a consulting perspective, the first thing that comes is, we can do the change management. It's just a bit of communication. But at the end of the day, if we don't get the team on board, and the team being the broader organization, supply chain, very rarely is it the technology that fails. So putting your business case at risk, often we must make sure that we measure as we go through, and a lot of organizations don't, is measure user engagement through the journey, and measure and ensure that people have a forum. If you don't give them a forum to raise their concerns, and you don't manage them in a structured way, then they will tend to become part of the grapevine and the gossip, and that can undermine projects. So it is an important, and not to look at it as a cost, but actually look at it as an investment. The other piece is the change is not about the project, and often we say the journey begins when the technology implementation finishes, and that's really important. That change is a journey, and the investment shouldn't just be a project investment. It's making sure that we have that in ongoing training, we have it in onboarding, we have it through the life cycle of an employee. When we're talking about software as a service, it's really important that that change comes in to allow processes that, as new technology or new capability is made available by the vendors, that we have a process to adopt and educate ongoing.
Yeah, and Jordan, help us understand what we need to be looking for these days. Also, what differentiates a good software provider or partner?
Yeah, so I think the kinds of things that Chris just talked about, I think it's very critical. I'm on the I come from implementation, but now looking after pre-sales, I do often see a pressure on behalf of our prospective customers or existing customers to lower costs. And oftentimes one of the first things to go in a project plan is that bucket of time that's allotted to change management, and to really things like user acceptance training and end user training. Those are the areas where people start to cut out hours. So I think really some of the best software providers are companies that are willing to really put their foot down in terms of what is a best practice and what leads to the best outcome, and not just what is the lowest cost possible solution. So just last week, for example, I was out visiting one of our customers, and they had just gone live with their second of many warehouses, and they had taken some learnings from their first warehouse implementation, in that they took a 70-30 approach, where they assumed that 70% of 70% adherence to the processes from their employees should be enough to get them through the hump of go live. And that really, that we had advised against that. But it turned into a very difficult first implementation of the solution. And subsequently, they took the learnings from that. And the second site, which was much, much more complex, much higher volumes, they took a different approach to change management, invested in the change management, and consequently saw zero negative impact during a go live period for their second site. And really that was the same software, essentially the same type of culture and people. The only thing that really had changed was the commitment of the company toward educating employees, not just in the system, but in the why it was being implemented. So I think a really best practice provider is one that's willing to work with their customers to tell them and try to impart those best practices beyond just best of breed solutions. So it's one thing to provide a best of breed solution, but if you're not clear on what the objectives are, and what the scope of the implementation is, and clear with the organization as to what is to be gained from that implementation, then there's a higher likelihood that you'll run into challenges during the project.
Yeah, fantastic. And Chris, last thoughts? What are your last thoughts or advice to our members? I mean, at least 50% of them are going through some sort of digital transformation journey. What's your advice?
I think the advice is be open to doing things differently. Often, we say if you do the same processes on new technology, that's just an expensive new software that doesn't really help you. So really be open when you go into the journey to do things differently to what you do today, and focus on trying to get the core things right, and then start with the basics. You can always add complexity, but it's very difficult to take complexity out. That would probably be my advice, is where possible, keep it simple and be prepared to change.
Great words there. And Jordan, your last pieces of advice?
Yeah, I'll echo that in a sense. I think oftentimes organizations go through very long, protracted analysis periods into what they should do. And I think a recommendation is to, given the way that the technology has become much more adaptable and much more able to be deployed in a phased fashion, I think to begin with something, do something that you've identified as an opportunity, with the help of companies like 4PL or JDA or other consultancies. Start somewhere. Oftentimes we see a sort of paralysis by analysis, because a company sees that they've got so much that they can improve, that they spend all the time trying to determine what to do first, and in the end, do very little. So I think start, even if it's with a small project or a small engagement.
That's great advice, especially as we head into 2020. It's been a pleasure. Chris and Jordan, thank you both for joining us on the lounge.
Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, members, and see you again next time. Bye for now.